Welcome back to another podcast. Sat next to me today, I have Mr. Matt Frawley. What is the message?
Brandon, how are you, mate? Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited for this one, my man. So we go back a long time. You knew me as a young, brace-faced man back at Huddersfield Giants. That's when we first encountered. And to think that we're sat here today after a couple of trips back and forth to Australia, it's a bit mad, isn't it?
Yeah, mate. It's obviously, I think 2019 was the first time I met your owner. You were, as you said, I think you were coming through the academy at Huddersfield, and then you started full time with us. And then the Huddersfield ended up having the partnership with the Raiders, and you come over to Canberra, and obviously transitioned over to Canberra as well. And you didn't have a lot of time there, but I think you made your most of your time over there in Canberra. And then, back over here now personally, and then obviously kept the connections up, and it's good to be back over here and good to be with you, mate.
Mate, just following you around everywhere, haven't I? Literally just following you around. Obviously, it's early now in the Super League season. Tough start to the season, but tough pre-season as well, I'd imagine. As far as I heard, it's been a tough grind so far, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has been, mate. It's I think we wanted a tough pre-season as a group, having BA come in, and that's sort of his style, and we had a really hard one, but I think you sort of have to set you up for a year, and it was enjoyable too. I think you got to find some enjoyment in those tough days, and I've done a fair few of them now, so I sort of can get my head around them. But it was tough for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, over here you got different conditions and everything. Normally, in Australia it's hot, and you got those challenges. But over here it's a bit different in the winter. Enjoyed it, and then had a couple of good trials, and then obviously a disappointing game on the weekend. So it's round one. Bit of a cliche, but there's still plenty of time in the competition. But it was a disappointing one on the weekend.
It's a long old season over here, isn't it? Like you said, it's completely polar opposites to Australia. Have a warm pre-season, you sort of hit the ground running over there when you go into the trials and you go into round one. Like you're dry weather footy, like the passes are sticking in that, and then over here it's freezing cold, lashing rain. It's a complete round 1 to 10 is a completely different competition to then round 10 to 25, and then the last few rounds you're back into this sort of I suppose it's a game of completion, isn't it, at this stage, at this time of the year?
Yeah, big time. I think, as you said, and because the games are, you play sort of 30 odd games. You have, I think last year felt like we had 4 or 5 seasons in one. It was just a roller coaster of, we obviously had our ups and downs last year, but throw in the conditions and the way the game's sort of played over here. You do have different stages in the year, so I think you got to adapt to that and play a different style early in the year, and then obviously once it gets warmer and you get a bit more of a free-flowing style of game, you can throw the ball around a bit more. But at the moment it's a bit of a grind, bit of a slog, especially if you're playing at odds all every week like you run. It's can be hard, but Headingley's pretty. It was a good setup, and it's just part of the game over here.
That's it for sure. And I think one of the things I want to touch on with you is you're the leader. You steer the pack. You steer the team around the game. So what is it like for you when you're on that roller coaster? In particular, last season as well. Like you've been on that roller coaster probably every single year. But as a halfback, the expectation's high. The pressure's high on you because the demand of your role is to navigate a team through a game and sort of have a good read on the game and direct your troops through the shit fight or the good, the bad, and the ugly. Do you feel like that? Do you feel that pressure on yourself?
Yes and no. I think, especially early in my career, I rode the roller coaster really hard, and I think that's hard. I think that's just normal for every player, but as you said, as the position that I play, being halfback, it's probably an added bit of pressure. But in saying that, it's the position I've played my whole career, so I don't really know any different. It's just how it is. It's my job, and I wouldn't know what it's like to be in any other position. So it's just how it is, and I think you got to enjoy it. You got to learn to enjoy that as well. It's part of the gig, but it can be hard, and I don't think you can never really nail or sort of come off that roller coaster, I suppose. I think, you can get better at trying to stay even keel and not getting too high, not getting too low, all those sort of things. But once you're in it, you're in it. And, even this week, just because it's round one, it feels like it's probably a bigger result than what it is if you'd lost that game five weeks in, because you do a 6-month pre-season. We've targeted that game as your start of the year, and then you're really deflated after it because you haven't had anything. You haven't had a game after that game, and there's a big build up to it. So yeah, you just gotta deal with it. But as we said, there's 30 games over here, so we'll get 30 more opportunities to get it right.
Absolutely. No one remembers round one at the back end of the season, do they? Really, I think what you touched on there is really important as well. Is obviously you're riding that wave, but it's a constant pursuit of trying to be better. That's why we play this game, and that's why we continue to do it year on year, season on season. Is that we're not content with just being okay with our performances, and I think that's something that I obviously deal with. You deal with, I'd imagine. Just being in this sport, you're always trying to improve, aren't you? You're not just in it just to be part of it and just be a passenger on the journey. You're in it to improve, and even at your best, you always know that there's something that you could have done better. Even when you feel like, or maybe external noises, that was a 10 out of 10 performance from Frawley's, like, you always internally know that there's something you can still do to be better, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. I think, as you said, there's probably two parts of that. The external stuff I've got really good at in terms of not looking at anything. I think early in my career I was, looking at good things and looking at bad things. You don't really remember the good things. You just worry about what the bad things are, and that's just human nature. That's how we're all sort of built, just to worry about the negative things. But also for me, the thing that sort of helped me the most and is probably just worrying about the small parts and not worrying too much about the big picture, and just breaking things down, whether it's your game or your training sessions and that sort of stuff. If you worry too much about the big picture and the pressure of the position or whatever we're talking about, it can get a bit overwhelming. But I think if you just focus on little things and sort of put little goals and little targets on each parts of your game, I think that sort of adds up to where you want to get to. But as you said, you're never going to get to a perfect position, but you can strive towards it, and that's the beauty of doing something you love.
Absolutely, that's the beauty of the job that we get to do week in, week out. Take us back then. You're talking about your early career, and obviously as you get older, you learn to bat away that external noise. You learn to focus inwards, and as you mentioned, focus on the little things, like what you can do, the little 1% gains that eventually exponentially grow and get you to where you want to go. But tell us a little about coming through. How you got to sat next to me in the north of England, an Irishman and a man from Australia. As I said, I've been following you around but pretty much the whole time. But tell us about how you came through as a junior, and then obviously you came over here. What age were you then? You weren't much older than I am now.
Nah, so I think I was 24 when I came over, 23, 24.
I was going to say, I thought you were about 24 when you came over.
Yeah. So I'd played. Grew up in Canberra, played all my footy in Canberra from a young age, and loved the Raiders, loved supporting rugby league. My brother had played it. My dad was a big Raiders fan. So
the milk.
Up the milk, yeah. And still are. They're actually going to Vegas, my dad and my brother, for the Raiders game next week to watch them. So pretty jealous of that. But so I played all my local footy there, played a bit of Harold Mats and a bit of SG Ball, which is the under-18s and under-16s competition, but didn't really get too much of a go. Was sort of on the fringe of them squads, and wasn't a gun junior by any means, was sort of just a steady player. And then the probably turning point or a big part of my journey was my under-18 schoolboys carnival. Played for the ACT, had a good carnival, and then made the under-20 squad after that for what used to be the Holden Cup back home. And that's sort of you need to be in one of those squads really to make a fist in the NRL from a young age. So did that, made the under-20 squad at Canberra, and had a good start of the year. I was playing a bit of hooker, a bit of half. And then got a really bad head knock. I was out for almost 6 or 7 months. Didn't really come back from that.
Jesus.
Which was tough. Was in hospital for a little bit and all that sort of stuff. But made a full recovery. And
what happened? Do you mind me asking?
Yeah, just we're playing the Warriors in a 20s game and made a line break, drew the fullback, and then he sort of just hit me late and with a shoulder charge and got me, sort of fair in the face. And it wasn't great. I had a convulsion and all sorts on the field, and went straight to hospital. Can't remember a thing. Just remember waking up in hospital half an hour later.
Did you think that was the end of your rugby career? Did you always know you were going to bounce back from that?
It was without
it's
me
scary.
Scary. Yeah, it was. It was more scary for mum and dad and everything because they were at the game, family were at the game. It was without me sounding old. The awareness and probably the focus on head knocks weren't what they are today. So I never really had a doubt that I was going to come back, but I had to tick a lot of boxes to come back. So pretty much, I think that was might have been round 8 or so of that year, and then had that whole year out of the game. Couldn't really do contact till sort of late in that year. So I wasn't sure if I was going to come back, but come back, got the all clear from the doctors. And then, so I only sort of had another 1 year window to have a crack at it at Canberra, and I ended up having a good year in my last year of 20s. And then there was no option to stay at Canberra. They'd signed Osto, and I think Seas had signed there as well. So
full circle again.
Yeah, I've followed Seas a fair bit, and so and I think Mitchy Cornish was there. They had a couple of really good halves there that there just wasn't an option. So was waiting around and was sort of in limbo until didn't know what I was going to do. And then the Bulldogs ended up offering me a contract 2-year deal, which was unreal because they just made the grand final in 2014. So they had Josh Reynolds and Trent Hodgkinson as the halves, and they were the Origin halves at the time. So it was a perfect setup for me going there and trying to learn my trade from them. And Des was the coach, Des Hazard was the coach, and he was probably the best coach at the time in the NRL. So jumped straight at it, went over to the Dogs, and had my first 2 years, didn't play. I was in the NRL squad, didn't play NRL, then debuted in my third year there, and pretty much played that whole year in 17, and then had a bit of an up and down year in 18, then come over to Huddersfield 19.
And that's when we crossed paths.
Yeah.
As a young lad, obviously over there, your dreams to play NRL.
Yeah.
When after those first 2 years at the Dogs, you didn't manage to get in. You have 2 set of Origin halves in front of you. What's going through your mind, and what's the process then for like a young kid in the halves? Because like I suppose for a middle, let's say for like myself, there's going to be 2 or 3, maybe even 4 bench spots for a middle.
Yeah.
Like it's not more straightforward, but there's only 2 halves on the pitch. You're never carrying a third half on the bench unless there's something mad going on. You know what I mean? So what's going through your head when you're grinding away at that process and you're just chomping at the bit, waiting for that opportunity to come, and then you finally get it?
Yeah.
What's going through the mind? What's the mind like then? And how are you preparing to make sure that when you step over that whitewash on your NRL debut, you're ready to go?
Yeah, I think when I first got there, I knew I wasn't really going to be playing that year. Like I had a hope that I'd play, but there was Hocko and Josh there, and then also Moses Embai was the sort of backup half utility there who had played in a grand final previously at hooker because Mick Ennis was injured, so he was sort of transitioning back into the halves. So I knew I was a fair way off, and I wasn't ready in terms of hadn't done an NRL pre-season, done anything. So it was just more about just learning and trying to learn off probably the 2 state of origin halves at the time. It's probably the best scenario you could be in as a half at that time. So I just tried to train hard. Like it sounds pretty cliche, but it's pretty simple. You just got to try to train hard and learn as much and build those relationships with the older boys. And you had the added sort of difficulties of moving away from home. I had moved away from home, moved from Canberra to Sydney, and didn't know anyone at the club. So that was hard at the start, but it was the best thing that could happen to me. And I think just not saying no to anything, just saying yes to any extras or any extra work I could do or doing anything like that, and then eventually getting results, and then going into that next pre-season, having a better pre-season, feeling confident, having a good year of cup, and then getting a chance in the NRL.
savage. That's savage. And I think one of the things for me, like just speaking on what you're on about, is like your first grade preseason. Well, I found it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I was similar to you. I was like obviously away from home. Like I was in Huddersfield. You were up in Sydney, but I was away from home. I'm not really with anyone, and I didn't know anyone that I could even ask, like, how the fuck do you do this? Like, it might sound stupid, but like my first Super League preseason with Huddersfield, I was still in the academy, but yeah, they send us up to do a full preseason, and I think like I lost like 4 or 5 kilos by accident. Like I wasn't fat. I just wasn't like probably necessarily. It's not that I didn't know how to fuel myself right, but I just wasn't probably eating enough of the right foods, getting my body right. Like I remember feeling so broken. So I was like, you're not meant to feel this bad after. And obviously you're a young kid. You're 18. Like you've probably not got the man strength yet to be dealing with a preseason just quite yet. As well as I was raw. Like I was completely raw to the game, which did not help this situation either. So I'm probably getting myself in bad tackles, battering myself a little bit more than I should be. And then obviously not knowing how to manage my body as well as I should, like just doing the little extras that I know how to do now. But by the time I came out, I was like, Jesus, I'm looking skinny and I feel crap. That's not what you're meant. It's meant to be the opposite after preseason. You're meant to look big and jacked and feel great. But managing that first preseason, what was that like? And obviously coming away from home for the first time.
Yeah, it was tough. I think I think everyone goes through it. You have some dark times. When you haven't experienced it, and Des is pretty sort of, I suppose, renowned for training his players pretty hard. So it was really tough. But I think I was really lucky in the sense I had Adam Elliott and another one of our mates, Tussie, who was same age, had just come up from the 20s, and we were all looking for a place to live. So we all moved in together, which was awesome because we pretty much became best mates straight away, and we all got along, and we all were pretty driven in terms of our training and trying to do it properly and not sort of just cruise through it. And so that was massive. I'm potentially if they weren't there at the time, things could have worked out differently for me. But having them two was huge, and then having a really good crew. There was a really good bunch of guys at the club that leaders, and a real good culture in terms of allowing young boys to feel included, and that was massive. I think that's a big part of it, and something that I've tried to develop now that I've got older, to help young boys come through, because it is hard, and especially in pre-season when the light at the end of the tunnels can be a long way away.
You can't see it.
Yeah, you can't see it.
You can't see it.
And a lot of little things just help me along the way, and then you get to the end of it, and once you knock one out, you feel confident for your second one, and you just sort of compound. And then I've done 11 of them now, so you become, it's just part of the job now, isn't it?
That's it, and that sort of brings us up to when we crossed paths. You signed in 19 at Huddersfield. Like you said, you were 24 years old, so you're the same age as me now. You're coming across the world. Firstly, what was what was the reason or the idea behind taking the plunge and testing yourself in the Super League? And then tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, so I'd left the Dogs. They'd signed. They signed Cogs, Jack Cogger, who was at Huddersfield, and
full circle.
Yeah,
all follow each other around.
yeah, pretty much. There was an opportunity for me to stay. There was a few things at home that probably weren't the right choice for me, and I wanted to go over and be a starting half, whether that was in Super League or the NRL, and it didn't really worry me. And Huddersfield come up. We had a relationship with Germ at the time, and there was an opportunity to come out of Huddersfield, and they'd come off a couple of tough years, but there was a good squad there, which was exciting. So decided to take the plunge, and same sort of thing as I experienced when I moved from Canberra to Sydney. It's probably tenfold when you move to the other side of the world, as you know, Ronas. You got to start again, and you got to build those relationships up, and then you got just learning about living in England, and the weather doesn't worry me too much, because Canberra's not much better, but just little things like paying council tax, or all those little things that you don't know of. And
the shops on the Sunday.
All those sort of things. Cafes not being open. All the things that are just not important at all, but just different to life back home. So yeah, that was an adjustment. But yeah, I think it was the best thing for me really in terms of life experience, and then the footy side of things wasn't great. But I think it made me a better player and a better person at the end of it.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, I was a young kid when we first met. But I feel like, knowing what I know now, there was a massive expectation for you coming to Huddersfield. Like, you come to Huddersfield as this like Australian halfback, but you were 24 years old. Do you know, like, and the I don't know. I feel like the perspective wasn't there from outside noise. Do you know? And I don't know if you felt that as well. But I think that, like, to put it into perspective, like, I think you were a year older than Ollie Russell at the time, or maybe 2 years older. Like, and Russ had just come through the academy ahead of me, or a few years older. No, you wouldn't be 1 year older. That's me talking to you. But you would have been a couple of years older than Russ, because he would have been just a bit older than me.
Yeah.
And, like, to have that sort of expectation put onto you as a young man, like, obviously you played a bit of NRL, but you're not a veteran half coming over. Do you know what I mean? Do you feel like that definitely contributed to maybe potentially it not being perfect at Huddersfield straight away and not firing at all cylinders?
Yeah, I think so. I think at the time I didn't feel like that, because you can never really have that doubt in your mind. Like, I'll always sort of back myself to play like that. But now in hindsight, I think you're exactly right. I think I'd played probably 30 odd NRL games, which isn't a lot, especially as a half. I don't think you feel massively comfortable, or your own game, until probably when you get towards 30. And I feel as though I've only really understood that in the last couple of years. So yeah, I think in hindsight that's definitely a pretty accurate assessment of it. And I think I would have liked it to go a lot different, but it didn't. And similar to what we're saying, when you're a halfback, you get a lot of praise, but you also get a lot of you got to wear the bad times, and that was a good lesson in that, in terms of owning the team's results, individual results, and but being able to learn from those experiences and get better is probably the best part about it. Yeah,
for sure. And I think obviously getting uncomfortable as well, coming to the other side of the world, like, you're in a completely new place, new people, new style of playing, I suppose, and you're in the mix, really, aren't you? You're thrown in the deep end straight away. Like, we all know, 19, we weren't perfect. I was obviously on the fringes, still playing academy on the fringes, but I was training with the first team and that. And I think that, like, everyone knows that it wasn't perfect at the time, but I feel like to put responsibility onto you as such a young man probably wasn't the solution either. But that's what I felt like from the outside. So in terms of dealing with that, like, external noise, do you feel like as you age, you become better with filtering that out and focusing inwards?
Yeah, I think so. I think the big thing about the external noise is probably just social media stuff, isn't it? Like, I think all the media back home's probably a lot more in your face and everything, but I'm not a player that attracts any media attention, to be honest. I'm just you fly under the radar, which is good, which is fine. But I think social media, everyone cops it, no matter what position you play. If you're playing professional sport, whatever sport you're playing, you cop it, and if you don't look at it, you don't know about it.
You don't know about it.
Yeah, and it's really as simple as that, but it's easy to say but hard to do, I think. And but I think I've gotten heaps better, and I wouldn't have seen a Instagram post about rugby league or Facebook or whatever it is for a couple of years now. So
a wise man.
It's whether it's good or bad, I don't want to know really. And if you don't know about it, you don't have to worry about it. So
if it's out of sight, it's out of mind, isn't it?
And it's also, just on top of that, it's not being oblivious to what's out there either. I think that's important. I think you can be like that, but then also have the head in the clouds and think it's all going perfect. But you're obviously aware if you're not playing well, or having some self-awareness is important in terms of it's probably out there, but not focusing on that and just focusing about what you can do to get better, or change what is happening is important, I think.
For sure. And I think having that self-awareness piece in life in general, but in sport, it's key, isn't it? Because you need to be aware in order to improve. Because if you actually don't know where you're at with something, how can you implement any action to improve yourself? You can't. No. You can't, because you're not aware enough to go, I'm not good at that. You know that kind of way. And awareness is the first cause. It's the first thing that you need to lead you towards any action. And that sort of brings us to when we cross paths again. So you leave Huddersfield, you go to Canberra, I follow you to Canberra again. And just before we dive into that, I just want to say, like, you mentioned about obviously being a young lad coming through at the Dogs and creating that environment. Like, I think that you as more of a senior player to me and to the young lads at Huddersfield, and then obviously when I went over to Canberra, like, you were a massive role model, and you felt like really approachable to me as an academy player, and then obviously like the youngest player in the squad in 2019 as a Super League, as part of the Super League squad. Like, obviously there was no chance of me probably playing in 2019. I was a complete novice still. Like, I'd only been playing the game a couple of years, but as someone who was like, I feel like it's so easy for a more of a senior player, even though you were young at the time, like it's easy. You're going to be the starting halfback. There's no need for you necessarily to, not in an arrogant way, but like you don't need to be chatting away or offering to go for a coffee with the 19-year-old academy kid. But you were always there doing that, which I think is credit to you as a person, and it's probably why you've got to where you are now. And obviously why we're still sat next to each other, because if I thought, no, this fella's a complete arsehole, I would have been like, no, good luck to you. You know, but I do think that, like, all through my time at Huddersfield and then going to Canberra, like, you were always there. Like, you were always shooting me messages like, do you want to come for a coffee? Even if like I was like probably like, no way, like I can't go for a coffee with Paul. Like, do you know that kind of way? You were always only a message away, and like I think that's credit to you as a person.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man, and that's awesome to hear, because I think, as I said before, I think you learn that from when I was growing up, through my parents and through my family and just mates outside of footy, but also from players I played with. And I think, I talked about Josh Reynolds before, who he was that real glue guy at the Bulldogs who I learnt from, who's one of my best mates to this day, and he was exactly the same position as what you were at Huddersfield. I was at the Bulldogs. He was a State of Origin half. I was this 20s kid from Canberra that no one had ever heard of, but he always put time into knowing the younger boys, and then we ended up living together, and that relationship just grew from there. So I think, learning about that and experiencing that from him, and he wasn't the only one, there was heaps of them at the Bulldogs. I think, you got to pay that forward, and it's an important piece of having a good culture and a good team culture.
For sure. And then you get the opportunity to get another crack at the NRL then. What are you thinking? You're going back home, you're repacking your bags up again, you're on your way back to your hometown team.
Yeah.
That was probably a dream of yours as a young fella.
Oh, massively. It couldn't have, it was probably the hardest part of my career leaving Huddersfield, because I didn't leave on my terms, and it was all rushed and a bit, late in the piece, and I didn't know what I was going to do, and we were just waiting to hear back from some clubs over here or clubs back home, and the clubs over here were pretty much all the quota spots were taken because it was so late in the year. And then I was willing to go anywhere back home, and then when Canberra come into contact, it was a bit of a crazy sort of sliding door moment, I suppose. I think because Huddersfield had a relationship with Canberra at the time through Germ, Donny Ferner, who was the CEO at Canberra at the time and still is, he came over to have a look at Huddersfield and to meet some players, and just to they had an academy set up, which is how you ended up going to Canberra, I think, at the time. Yeah. And so he just come to training, and I sort of told him a scenario that I was in, and he's like, "Oh, I'll just leave it with me." And then sort of 6 weeks later, I got the call that they were keen to have me. So if he wasn't there at training that day, or if I wasn't there, if I hadn't seen him, that opportunity to go home might not have happened. So for it to be Canberra, and for me to be able to not only go home to Australia but home to my hometown, and at the time where I was probably a little bit lost in terms of my footy and was a bit down on confidence, it was something that I needed to do. And even to go to a team that had established halves in Jacko and Georgie Williams at the time, it was just good to go there and start again, and not have the pressure of going straight back into an NRL system and playing not into a starting team, into a bit more of a backup role with Sammy Williams, and then building my game back up from there was the best thing that happened to me. So it couldn't have worked out any better for me. I was lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you don't realise you need to go backwards to go forward, don't you?
Yeah.
And like they do say, like rock bottom's the best foundation to build up from. And I feel like I've seen your career kick on off the back of that. You've just been on, like you've been projecting back up. But what's going through your mind when you're sort of in that limbo stage? Like you've come off the back of the season and you're in that bit of like no man's land. What's it like? Because I know what it's like when you only have a 1 year deal. You're coming to the end of your contract, or you know that you're about to. Like it's going to finish up somehow, whether it's on your terms or whether someone's saying, "Listen, you sort of know the door's coming for you." What's going through your mind as an athlete? Because like I know it's a tough spot to be in. Never mind being on the other side of the world where you're like you have a million and one other things. What's the mind like then?
Yeah, well, it was quite tough because I'd signed a 2-year deal. Got to the end of that first year. And was pretty much waiting to fly home to go to Canberra for the off season to come back and train and start pre-season and play again in 2020. And then got the sort of tap on the shoulder on once the season had finished that I wasn't sort of needed for 2020. And it's hard to hear that when the season had finished and you have no backup plan. But I thought, well, I need to be able to still train and be in a system to be able to get another club. So I flew home to Canberra pretty much straight away, knowing that I'd be coming back to pre-season Huddersfield, but knowing that I wasn't going to be playing there the year after. So that was a bit of a hard one because I come back to pre-season, back to England, knowing I wasn't going to be playing at Huddersfield, but just trying to stay fit and be in a system. And that sort of, I think I was training for maybe 4 weeks or something. And that was hard because they were getting a bit antsy because they needed me to leave to get a quota spot for C's to come. And I needed to find a club, but that doesn't happen overnight. There's got to be a bit of a process, obviously. So that period was pretty tough. But it all worked out, I think, best for both parties at the end, to be honest. And there's no hard feelings, just how it is. It's the business of footy, and I understand that's just how it rolls. But that was difficult. But then the light at the end of the tunnel was Canberra, and I think it just worked out. Yeah, sort of perfectly for it in the end. Yeah,
it couldn't have gone better in a weird way. And sometimes things are just meant to be. I genuinely think that sometimes things are just meant to be. And first, like, credit where credit's due. Like you carried yourself through that time in 19 well. I'd have never known. I know as a young lad, and you're probably never going to say it to me anyways, but yeah. I'd have never known like what was going on. Like you were just carrying yourself, training the house down as you always do, and then obviously things just happened. And then I get told I'm following you back over the camera. They say to me this whatever reason this setup's happening. They're like, Ronan, you're gonna go spend a year in Canberra. And I was like, this is the best ever. I'm like, Frawley's over there. I'm coming over. I was like, this is surreal to me. Like I think that like that for me, like getting to go there was just like I couldn't believe it. Because there was that many kids in the academy system at Huddersfield as well that they could have sent. That in my head, I was like, when they announced this relationship, I was like, surely they're going to send someone like maybe Dom or like one of the senior twins or someone like that. You know what I mean? I was like, why would they send this random kid from Ireland? But it was the best thing that ever happened to me, I have to say. And what soft spot in my heart for Canberra.
Yeah, well, I think unfortunately for you, I think you come when it was just before COVID, wasn't it? So I think we had the bushfires in Canberra at the time as well, didn't we? So you had bushfires, COVID. You had a pretty disruptive time there. But I think for you, like as you said, you're a young kid from Ireland that's in now in NRL. Even though you're in the 20s, you're training in the facilities, you're meeting all the players, you're in and amongst it. That's awesome. That's life changing and a massive life experience that, as you said, you probably didn't expect to get. No, it was mental. It was the craziest. Like that was like the maddest couple of months of my life. Like I went from the year prior to 19, like this last season of academy, I was on the tools, like building pallets all day, and then Jerome would ring me and go, I need you for training today. So like I'd have been sat in work at 7. I'd come from work, I'd get to like Leeds Road at like 9:30, 10 o'clock. Like I'd have done 2 hours of work, maybe just
straight, just chasing the dream, really, you know, be a battering ram on the Bibs team, be a battering ram, and then from there, like, obviously, like, I finished that season sort of like I was in that no man's land. I didn't have a contract, I wasn't getting offered, got offered a Super League deal. I was, this is life changing. I've actually got like a first team deal. Did that pre-season. From there, they said to me, like, Ronan, we're going to send you to Australia for a year, and then you're going to come back and have a new Super League deal. And I was like, this is, like, are you joking me? Like, I was like, this is the best ever. Like, I was working on the tools for £50 a day, like 3-4 months ago, and now here I am with this opportunity in front of me. Get to Canberra again, like living the dream. Then like Pete Mulholland at the time says to me, he said, "Mate, I want you to start doing the front end of the week with the NRL." He was like, "I'm gonna upgrade your deal. I want you to do front end of the week, just do like Monday, Tuesday, you know, like your more light recovery days, and then back end of the week drop to 20s. I think this is the best ever." And within 2 weeks of that conversation, COVID hit. Within 2 weeks, like we literally, it went from like with the comp cancelled. You're not gonna, like, it was like everyone was certain you're not going home. It's fine here. Like, whatever's happening in Europe's happening. Like Italy, UK, Ireland getting shut down. They're like, no, it's fine here. Within a week of that conversation, they're like, it's probably best you go home. Like, we don't know what's gonna go. Yous are going into the bubble as the NRL. You know, yous are getting flown up to Queensland. All of this. Like, there's a top 30 bubble. 20s comps completely cancelled. All our money comes down from that. So we're sort of in that limbo. And within like a couple months of me being at, like, up here, I'm training. I've got to train with that. Like, this is like life changing for me, for a kid who's been playing rugby league for 2 years. I was up a ladder washing windows back home in my mum's bed, like in my mum's small bedroom in the little box room. I was like it's literally the sport.
How was that? How was that? Like, not realise that as you said, you're going from the height and, you know, the best time of your life to back to sort of square one. That would have been.
Mate, it was like a baseball bat to the face. It was, you know, honestly, it was, as I said, like one minute I'm like training, I'm in the best facility ever. I'm pinching myself. I'm like, someone tell me that this is like a joke or something. To like within a short 6 week time period, I'm up a ladder, cleaning windows, washing gutters, like back to square one. My camera, I'm not getting paid from Canberra. I'm not getting paid from Huddersfield. I'm in this limbo of nothing. I'm back playing amateur Gaelic football.
So you didn't even have, because Huddersfield, there wasn't a Super League comp at the time, mate. Like, it was the COVID hit. So there was no Huddersfield deal either for you.
Well, so it was a bit of a weird one. I've actually never really spoke about this on the pod, but it was one of these ones where I was meant to be at Canberra all year, and then my Huddersfield contract was started for the next year. So I was in this weird period of no contract between, because, like, as a result of a natural disaster or whatever, the 20s contract was done pretty much, and then my Huddersfield contract didn't start till December 1, 2020, because that's when the next contract starts. So I was like, obviously everyone was like chilling in COVID over here in the UK. They were like relaxing on furlough or whatever, and then the comp started back like a few weeks after the NRL, maybe August time or something, and I'm ringing up saying, like, what's going on? I'm chomping at the bit. I'm saying, like, when am I coming back over? You know I'm going to be here next year, so when you're going to, and it was sort of like a bit of this, we don't know, like, COVID, do you know what I mean? There's a bit of a bubble that's not like and I was chomping at the bit, still working, like I was playing, as I said, amateur Gaelic football, amateur hurling. I was back playing for the Longhorns, amateur rugby league in like a 3-game series to win the All Ireland final. Mate, it was bonkers. And I'm washing windows, and then like I have the Apple Watch on. I'm up a ladder on the Apple Watch. I get this notification, Matthew Shaw, you know, the journal, and it's like Huddersfield Giants has 16 fit players this week for their game, because they were playing like every 4 days to chase the fixtures, because they came back so much later that year. Honestly, I nearly just tipped the ladder back. I was like, this can't be. I was like, I'd have been making me debut then. I was spewing. So then, obviously, off the back of that, they said they brought me back in early, and I was back in. But a few more bodies came back, and I only ended up playing the last game of the Super League season that year in 2020. That's when I made my debut. But that was like the literally definition of the rugby league roller coaster. I went like Super League deal, Canberra, back playing amateur, washing windows, to then Super League debut.
It's
so
crazy.
It was wild. It was madness. It was madness. But that brings us up to present time, really, doesn't it? In terms of you and your career. Now at the Rhinos, back to England again. You're repacking your bags. Was it easier the second time round?
It was. I think I would never say no to anything, but I wouldn't have come back to England unless it was the right opportunity. And I think Leeds was and I've said this 1,000 times in interviews before, but it is the truth. Like Leeds was probably at the top of the list of clubs I wanted to play for, just because I loved the city. Was aware, I'd spent a lot of time here, and then knew how good the club was and how big it was. And so when that opportunity to come play for Leeds come up, I was pretty keen on taking it. And in terms of moving over, it's it's still not easy, because I'd been back at Canberra. I sort of got used to being back at home with all my family and all my mates back home, and so saying goodbye to them was never easy, but it was definitely a lot easier than the first time. And because I'm a bit older now, I'm towards the back end of my career, I know it's only a shorter time thing and something I can really enjoy, and that's sort of been my mindset with it all. So it's, as we talked about, it's the roller coaster of rugby league. But in terms of being back here and playing for Leeds, again, it was a sort of perfect scenario for me.
For sure. And do you feel like coming back over here, having played for Canberra, having had those few years to rebuild yourself, rebuild your career, do you think that stood to you now, like coming in as a bit more, just a bit older, bit more life experience under your belt, bit of time at home to resettle? And obviously play for your hometown club, like that's as good as it gets really for for anyone. But that's a young fella's dream, isn't it, to get to play for your hometown club, to put on that green jersey and run out.
Yeah, big time. I think having that experience and probably playing the best footy I'd played in my whole career at Canberra has gave me a lot of confidence to come over here and play, and be able to make a difference and play decent, and just getting my enjoyment back in footy and all that sort of thing. I think that's really important. So, Canberra allowed me to do that, and I'll be super grateful for that opportunity, and still keep in contact with everyone there. Still got a really good relationship there. I'll be moving back to Canberra whenever I finish. That's home for me and my partner. It was a dream come true to play with them, but also it was the right time to move on and to come to Leeds and get back to the UK.
Back to the nice warm weather for yourself. What do you think the goals are this season for you as an individual? Like, do you feel like there's a lot of pressure on this year with Leeds being such a big club? Obviously, you said it was number one on your list to play for, but it's probably like one of the biggest clubs, definitely the biggest club in Yorkshire. Yep. It's for sure a big club and a high pressure environment, isn't it? But what's the goals for you as an individual, and I suppose for the year in general, like?
Yeah. Well, as you said, there's all those. I think that's the beauty of playing for Leeds, is expectation, and there is pressure, and you can sort of take it both ways. You can look at that as a negative or as a positive, and I think the only way to look at it as a positive is, because you want to be playing in big games, you want to be doing, achieving everything that every player wants to do. Obviously, everyone wants to win the competition. It's the way you play. So, in terms of individual goals, it's, I think I've got a few, but they're pretty boring rugby league goals. They're not sort of big, individual accolades or anything. It's just more, again, process sort of goals. If I'm ticking all the right boxes and giving myself the best opportunity to play well, I'm happy. So, that's what I'd continue to do. I've sort of done that my whole career, and hopefully, keep achieving them and then see where it takes us.
For sure, and like you're a humble man yourself, Frawley. Like listening to you speak, obviously I know you like away from that, but for people listening to you speak, the humility is there. Do you think that's part of you as an individual, and that's something that do you consciously work on yourself and that aspect, or do you just think it comes naturally?
I think it comes naturally. Even doing something like this, which is relaxed and everything, it's still not out of my comfort zone. I'm not, but it's something that I just. Yeah, I'm a pretty low key sort of.
You're a low key man.
Yeah, I think it's just who I am, which is it can be a good thing, but then I think also sometimes it can not hold me back, but I think it's good to have a healthy dose of not arrogance but confidence, which is something probably I need. I struggle with sometimes. I think it's important to have that. Sometimes, the self-awareness piece, as we were talking about before, it can be a real strength, but it can also be it can be a negative sometimes, because you can overthink things or, try to please everyone, which something that I've wary of and try not to do too much. But yeah, I think humility. I think you either have it or you don't. You can't really fake humility. I don't think it's just you're either humble or you're not, and some people are, some people aren't. And but I think if I call myself humble, I'm not humble. So it's got to come from you.
It's got to come from someone else. And I think one of the things that you touched on there was people pleasing. I think it's something that as a young player, when I was coming through, I feel like I wanted to fit the mold. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to be just like, you know what I mean? I just wanted to be normal. And then I've come to realise that you can't please everyone. And like, no matter what you do, even just trying to be normal as such, you're still going to piss someone else off, do you know, or someone's not going to take to you. You're not going to be someone's flavour, which is fine. Yeah. And that's something that I think has helped me as an individual and as a player, and actually helped me like play with more confidence and just be more myself. Is that like, I don't need to please everyone, and I don't need to. Not everyone needs to like what I do or how I go about my business, and that's fine. Do you know? But that's something that I realised with age and with time and with a bit of personal discovery as well, and spending a bit of time reflecting on that, like you mentioned again, that awareness piece. But spending that time to actually go, you know what, like I don't need to be everyone's cup of tea, or I don't need to please everybody for me to be content with myself and be confident within myself, because that's the beauty of life, isn't it? That you're not going to see eye to eye with everyone, and that's what makes things great, and that's what makes connection great, and that's what makes friendship great, is that you don't have to like everyone. That then the people that you do can share a conversation with, can go for a little blend with, like that's fantastic, because not everyone else is on the same page as you, which is fine too.
Well, it's exactly, what you're doing here, you're putting yourself out there. I think that's like, there's going to be people out there that say, that judge or whatever, and that's fine, but I think it's, as you said, you're not worrying about that, outside noise, and not worrying about what people think, which I think is awesome. And I think it's why, as I said, this is not something that I'm I'm comfortable doing, but it's not something that I normally do. But I know you're having a crack at it, and something I want. You're a good bloke with you're dreaming big, which is really important. I think, it's sort of my way of supporting you in terms of coming on is doing something like this, and everyone that comes on, I think it's awesome that you're having a crack at it, and I think that's a real good piece of what you're saying in terms of not pleasing everyone. If you were to please everyone, you might not have gone out and done something like this, but you are, and I think that's awesome, and it's it's good to see, man.
Mate, I really appreciate that. That's hectic. Frawls, goals for the future? Anything lined up after life after footy? Where do you see yourself? You obviously said back home in Canberra. When that is, we never know on this roller coaster. But besides that, do you have any other goals in the future? Anything else you go, that would tickle my fancy? Yeah,
I've changed my mind plenty of times in terms of what I want to do post footy. Like I've part of me wants to get out of the game completely for a little bit and have a bit of a reset, but then part of me, if there is an opportunity to do some work at Canberra, it'd be pretty hard to say no to, and it's a passion of mine, the club, and or footy in general, really. When I am to move back home, so I'll assess that whenever I decide to move on. I've done plenty of study, and I've got a bit of a passion and interest in finance and mortgage broking, so I've done all my work for as a mortgage broker back home, so I'll be writing loans probably at some stage, which is exciting. I think you got to have something, especially in the position that I've been in my career, where I've signed a lot of one-year deals, or not being guaranteed a contract every time I come off contract. Is important to have something as a backup, and I've done plenty of work in that space, and pretty comfortable with where I'm at in terms of the next stage. But whenever that comes, it's still going to be hard. I think, now that I'm 30, you get towards the back end, you got a lot of your mates that have moved on from the game, and a few have handled it really well, a few have struggled. You don't really know until you do it. So, we'll see where it takes us. But, I love my time at Leeds. Obviously, who knows, where it'll take us. But, I think whenever it does come to an end, we'll be back in Canberra, either kicking a footy around or writing some loans or doing something like that.
I suppose that one of the things that I think, on this side of the world, is if you don't step away from footy, you're never going to see the sun. You're never going to get a summer holiday. That's the thing. Whereas if you're back home, at least you're going to get a bit of sun.
Yeah, and I think the transition, I think, well, the way I'm sort of set up, you try rush things, I think, a little bit and try and make your mind up straight away. But I think until you actually make the time to decide to move on, you got to present all the options and make a decision from there in terms of, I might have something in my mind at this stage that I want to do, but that might change in 2-3 years' time or a year's time or 4 years' time, whenever it is. So, we'll see. We'll see where it takes us. But, I'm excited.
Knowing you, I know for a fact, Frawls, that whatever you do decide to do, it'll be an informed decision with plenty of thought gone into it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think, you just, when you have so much time as a footy player too, I think, and it's me and my partner over here and we got no kids or anything, so I spend a lot of time in terms of, just doing things outside of footy, because I think it really does help my footy as well. I think if you can, that's another, thing I've learned along the way. If it's just footy all the time, I think you can cook yourself a bit. So, it's a good distraction away from footy, especially when over here I'm away from family and friends and footy is all consuming. All your mates are your footy mates, and all your, you got no one really outside of the footy bubble. So I think that's my chance over here to get away from it, is to do those sort of, transition pieces or whatever it is. So, we'll see where it takes us.
What's the favourite thing to do away from footy around here?
Around here in England. In England.
Get on a plane is obviously option number one.
No, I like it over here, mate. I actually really enjoy it. I love Leeds too. But same as back home, really, and similar to what you do, Ron, just sit around cafes and drink coffee and talk shit. Really, I think, that's, I'm weird. I don't really have too many like hobbies in terms of, I don't play golf. I don't, I don't play chess. A lot of players play chess. I don't know. I just don't have any real. I like researching things and learning things and that sort of stuff, and then just hanging out with mates and talking shit, really, and American sport and horse racing. Two good things. My bank balance is a bit better over here because I don't really get into the jumps racing over here. I'm a big fan of flat racing back home, but the time difference makes it a bit harder. So that's been a good thing for me as well.
Winning all around, my man. Well, listen, Matt Frawley, that was a serious message. Thanks for having me, my man. Or thanks for coming on, my man.
Thanks, Ryan. Cheers, mate. Thank you.